to the Kakutougi Fightcast, where we aim to chat about all things fighting. This Fightcast is powered by the rather marvellous Kakutougi Fight Forum, which you can locate at kakutougi.proboards.com. My name is Darren Falco. I'm known on the forum as the Mage, or the Magey. Not quite sure you pronounce it. I never played Neverwinter Nights. And some of the topics we're going to be talking about on this first episode, we've decided to title it All Gloved Up, as I'm aiming to be chatting about mostly kickboxing and boxing today. Are Enriko Gogokhia's decision to switch from kickboxing to boxing full-time, and why that's quite interesting. The storylines that are beginning to form at the boxing at the Olympics in Rio, and also a little something that I wouldn't mind your interaction with. But the first thing we're going to chat about is last weekend's Glory of Heroes event, which went down at Shaanxi Stadium in Shaanxi, China. Glory of Heroes events are a production of Lin Feng. I think you could say that they are the supercards that Lin Feng put on. And this particular one, first of all, I want to say that this version that I saw, it was just the TV version. I didn't catch the prelims. And the version that I saw kicked off with a concert was going on. And I was quite pleased about that because it was in progress and I thought it wouldn't be too long left. But I was dead wrong there. It went on and on. I think I could have celebrated a birthday waiting for that to finish until it finally did. But eventually things wrapped up there and the fighting got underway. And the first fight was a 63-kilo fight between Deng Zichai and Stavros Exarchostidis from Greece. Deng was 3-0 coming into this one, and unfortunately he picked up a loss, even though he did control the first two rounds that I thought. But the first thing that I picked up when this one kicked off was the fact that Stavros looked a whole weight division smaller. It was very peculiar, but like I said, Stavros got the victory. It was a rather fortuitous one as well. At the end of the second round, Deng Zichai attempted a jumping knee attack, I think it was, and appeared to injure his lead leg. He's an orthodox fighter. This led to Stavros, he picked up on this straight away by the way, this led to Stavros going all in for the kill in the third round, and about 30-40 seconds into that third and final round, Deng Zichai just decided he couldn't continue, Stavros picking up the upset win, and I'd imagine, or I'd hope, that a rematch would be made for there, because it's pretty much a built-in storyline. So that was the first one, upset victory, like I said, for Stavros Exarchostidis, first time I'd seen him fight. And then the second contest was the 55-kilogram contest between the Golden Girl, Jemima Betrian of the Netherlands, or the Netherlands, I don't know why I said Netherlands for, and the host nation's Gong Yan Lee. It was a bit of an untidy contest, all things considered. Gong Yan Lee had a couple of points deducted in the second round for use of her head. She was constantly coming in with that. She turns her back a bit, has got a few bad habits, but on the whole, I'd describe her as a plucky roughhouse, and I think if you follow the kickboxing scene in China, you would have seen the finish to this one. 2 minutes 59 seconds of the third and final round, she uncorked and she twisted the bomb, I think you could say, rather than lowered the bomb. She landed an amazing spin and back fist. It was flush on the jaw, all fist, no forearm, absolutely perfect. She needed it and she got it. Poor Jemima was out to the world, and when she came to, she did look somewhat in shock. I'd just like to say that I noticed that Jemima seemed to have a little bit of skinning of the gloves going on. A couple of fighters did during the card, and that is, well, there's a bit of a debate on what skinning of the gloves entails, but I've always considered it to be when the tape on the gloves goes higher than the wrist, and which adds a bit more pressure onto the padding and gives you a bit more impact for the punches, I would imagine. And like I said, it should really be outlawed, because like I said, as far as I'm aware, you shouldn't go any higher than the wrist. But that's something that just to keep an eye on in future. But like I said, that was an amazing victory really for Gong Yan Lee. That was her second victory in Glory of Heroes. And according to Jemima's pre-fight video, that was her first kickboxing loss since the age of 16. So again, considering what happened and how it happened, I'd imagine that, I'd hope, again, that a rematch is made. Another built-in storyline for a future Glory of Heroes event, which I think the next one is on the 1st of October. So it might be a quick bit soon for that one to go ahead as a rematch. Maybe December, get that one done, hopefully. Then we moved on to the 63-kilogram division. Wei Roy, who was turning into be one of my favourites to watch in Lin Feng and Glory of Heroes. He took on Italy's Matteo Taccini, who, if you saw the debut edition of Bellator Kickboxing, picked up a loss to Kevin Ross. But this one, Matteo was never at the races. Wei Roy had Taccini's measure almost straight away. Southpaw Wei Roy is, and was strafing Matteo with the lead left. Was hooking well, the lead hand. And by the end of the first round, Mateo's face was so blotchy it looked as if he had a bad case of eczema. It didn't get any better in the second round. Wairoi was really beginning to smash home the counters. Mateo looked a bit out of ideas. I scored the second round a 10-8 round, as I did the third. Personally, I thought the referee could have stepped in the third round because Mateo had that hunched-up look in the third, which, as a fighter, he was desperately tired and he had nothing to offer apart from his gameness. Indeed, he had a level of gameness which reminded me of Masashi. If you remember, he had an incredible ability to take a kick and keep on ticking. I think that's the phrase I'm looking for. Yeah, take a kicking and keep on ticking. That's right. But yes, a big another 4-0 now for Wairoi, and if I'm being honest, I wouldn't mind seeing him step up a bit and take on a higher level of competition. The next thing I noticed from that broadcast, they displayed a video which was hyping a Lin Feng event. It wasn't a Glory of Heroes event, just a straight up Lin Feng event, which is going down on the 3rd of September. And the reason I noticed it was because it included video footage of Ernesto Hoost, Peter Arts, Remy Bonyaski and Mirko Krokop. So I was interested in how they're dovetailing that into that promotion. I'm guessing that it's got some sort of Netherlands feel to it, but I don't really know. I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's something that Shades of Kixie.com could help us out with on the forums. And then the next contest rather was 72 kilos. Sayok Pompangmong Windy Sport, he's a world-class Muay Thai operator, was taking on Zhang Kaiyin, who's a new name for me, Chinese kickboxing. Zhang Kaiyin was announced as a 2014 Sandar World Cup champion, and this was an awkward contest really, if I'm being truthful. Southpaw versus Southpaw. Sayok had a fair bit of skinning going on his gloves, and both looked for quick bursts of action here and there, but they both took lots of breaks. And Zhang Kaiyin, for example, was very much looking a bit tired at the end of the close of the second round. I personally scored at 29-28 for Sayok. I thought his punch quality was a little bit more pronounced, and I thought he nicked it for me, especially with his left hand. But I will accept it was a battle of what you prefer, really. And Sayok's kickboxing contests always do seem to be a little bit close. He's a bit of a passive clincher. But all three judges scored at 29-28 to Zhang Kaiyin. Always seems to be a little bit of a Chinese bias. But then again, what do you expect? And Sayok's picked up losses now in both Kunlun and Lin Feng in Glory of Heroes in recent months. So I wonder if he's going to stick around much more. I would imagine the pay is pretty good, so he may very well do so. But the 60 kilogram contest was next, and it was Kruk Yohen from Belarus against Yun Chi. I'd never seen Yun Chi fight before, but this was his second contest in Glory of Heroes. Not much to say really, apart from within 39 seconds, Kruk Yohen ran onto a perfectly timed left hook, which ended things pretty much straight away. It was announced as a TKO, but I clearly heard the referee count to 10, so I didn't know why it was announced as a knockout. But regardless, it was another victory for Yun Chi. He's now 2-0 in Glory of Heroes. And then we moved on to a 68 kilogram contest. Ti Yinghua, who is a regular on Glory of Heroes events. This was his fourth straight appearance there. He picked up a victory over Youssef Asoik of Denmark, who was particularly vicious early on with his left knee. Very impressed there. But Ti Yinghua is nothing but indefatigable and kept banging away at the body, ate everything that Youssef was throwing at him. And by the end of the contest, Youssef looked grateful for the final bell. All three judges scored at 29-28 to Ti Yinghua. But looking at my scorecard quickly, I had it the other way around. I had it to Youssef Asoik. But Ti Yinghua, I've got to say, if my scorecards are anything to go by, I would have him now at 0-4. I think he's lost every single one that I've seen. But he's got with the exception of the loss to Kemsit Songpinong, his Glory of Heroes record is now 3-1. And then that moved us on to the main event. On the co-main event, Israel Adesanya, the Black Dragon, who's getting plenty of action in Glory of Heroes. He took on Yusri Belgaroy of Mike's Gym. Mr. Fantastic, his nickname was. And again, I've got to say, I thought that Yusuf got the victory, or Yusri, I should say, got the victory on that one. I had it 29-28 to him, but all three judges had it 29-28 to the Black Dragon, as he styled in Lin Feng. I thought he looked a little bit tired, considering that he's had plenty of action this year, and last year, Israel. He's have gloves will travel kind of guy. I thought he looked a little bit ragged at the end of that one, but he got the victory nonetheless and carries on. Rumour has it, I was listening to Stephen the Warman Wright's podcast most recently, and he said that perhaps UFC had been in contact with Israel, so perhaps that could be something coming up in the near future. So maybe we might not be seeing him in China or kickboxing in general for much longer. And I've got to say that the VTR for this one had a big push to Israel's coach, a gentleman by the name of Sifu, who relocated to New Zealand, I think it is, or Australia. Excuse me for getting that, whichever one it is wrong, which is where Israel seems to be based. And so, like I said, they're really pushing this Chinese side of things for Israel. Interesting to see where that goes from there. And then the main event was Slippery Cedric Doumbé of France against Chin Yawei. That was a bit of a surprising choice for a main event for me. And the first thing I picked up on was that Cedric had Andre Manhart in his corner, the venerable trainer who's, of course, trained Peter Arts and many others over the years. But the fight itself, as soon as Cedric started landing, pretty much the fight was over. Chin Yawei didn't seem to want to know too much after getting caught by a few shots. A couple of the knockdowns, well, they weren't knockdowns, they weren't called, but I thought they were definitely legitimate ones. But after the third one was finally called, and after that, the referee wrapped things up. He'd seen enough. So that was Glory of Heroes. Like I said, the next one is on the 1st of October, which leads us on to our next topic I think we're going to chat about, which would be the boxing at the Olympics. I think I'll go kickboxing, boxing, kickboxing for this one. And the first thing I want to say was the contrasting fortunes of many of the lead nations. I mean, at the last Olympics, we had Team GB, who picked up, I think, 3 golds. Nicola Adams, I'll get it right eventually. Nicola Adams picked up a gold medal, as did Luke Campbell and Anthony Joshua. Fred Evans picked up a silver medal, and there was a bronze for Anthony Ogogo. This time around, I think it's going to be pretty difficult, being that half of the 12-strong GB teams already out of the tournament, unfortunately. Galal Yafai, Kaisa Shfak, Smoke and Joe Cordina, Josh Kelly, Anthony Fowler and Lawrence Okoli have all bowed out before the medal rounds, sad to say. But Muhammad Ali is a flyweight. Joshua Boatsi, Joe Joyce, Nicola Adams and Savannah Marshall are still in the tournament. 4 of those have yet to compete though, so fingers crossed there'll be some medals there. Team USA, on the other hand, at London 2012, all their male team bowed out before we got to the medal rounds. This time they've already got 1 medal guaranteed. Nico Hernandez has picked up a bronze. As things are standing, Antonio Vargas, Shakur Stevenson, who is the favourite to pick up a medal for the men's team. Gary Antoine Russell, the brother of the current WBC featherweight champ Gary Russell, he's still live in the tournament. And the women, Michaela Mayer and the only gold medalist from last Olympics for the USA, Claressa Shields, the middleweight, she's yet to make her Olympic bow. They're still going for the USA. But I've got to say that the reversal of fortunes, it must be down to the head coach, Billy Walsh, who was picked up in October, headhunted by USA Boxing, was formerly the head coach of the Irish High Performance Unit, and his departure from Ireland to USA seems to have coincided with a somewhat reversal in fortunes for the Irish team. They're now coached by a Georgian by the name of Zara Antia, I should say, and he's interim coach just for these games. And unfortunately for Ireland, the only 2 of their competitors, as I say this, who are still live in the tournament are Katie Taylor and Mick Conlon. And the reason they're still in the tournament, unfortunately, is because they've yet to fight. The rest of the team, Paddy Barnes, who was a big favourite to pick up a medal, Brendan Irvine, David Joyce, Simon Donnelly, Michael O'Reilly, who was ruled out of the games due to a positive drug test before the boxing even actually started, and Joe Ward, all bowed out before the medal rounds. So a big disappointment for what was formerly a medal factory. And like I say, Billy Walsh, I think, has got something to do with that. Russia and Ukraine, they're also powerhouses in the Olympic boxing front. They've pretty much been cleared out, more or less. I think Russia have got 1 or 2 remaining. I think Misha Aloyan, the flyweight, Mr. Nitikin, the bantamweight, and a couple of other ones. Evgeny Tishchenko, I think, is guaranteed a medal. Ukraine, they had Vasil Lomachenko, of course, and 1 or 2 others who picked up medals. They're pretty much, I think they may even be totally gone. Maxim Buchasenko, Dmitry Mitrofanov, and Dmitry Solenenko, they're all out, and also the light welterweight for Ukraine, they're all out of the tournament before the medal rounds. So it's really a bit of a topsy-turvy tournament. The stars of the show for the Olympic boxing got to be Uzbekistan. They've got one guaranteed medal, two guaranteed medals so far, heavyweight bronze, and also they're going to be going out for the light flyweight gold medal, or silver at least. And Kazakhstan are going well. Kazakhstan have put pay to a couple of British hopes, and already they've got Mr. Satabiev, the flyweight, the bantamweight, Yeraliev, and Yelusinov, the welterweight. They're still going strong, and also Zanabek Alam Kanuli, really slippery customer, middleweight, I think he is, middleweight. He's been the star of the show for them. Also Mr. Niyazambetov, Vitaly Levitt, the heavyweight, and Ivan Ditchko, the super heavyweight. They're still live. They could probably pick up medals. And the Cuban team, they're always strong in these sorts of tournaments, and so far they've got one medal, a bronze for Johannes Argalagos, the little titan, and Roniel Iglesias today was ruled out at welterweight, picked up a very controversial defeat to I think Kazakhstan member of the team there, but they've still got they've got about 7 remaining, and they're going to pick up a couple of medals definitely. Rabisi Ramirez, the bantamweight, he's one hell of a fighter. If you get the chance to watch him, please do so. He's unbelievably fast and excellent with both hands. Real master of the ring. Lazaro Alvarez, the lightweight. Yasnier Toledo Lopez, the light welterweight. Arlen Lopez, who scored a rare knockout in the Olympics. He's the middleweight. Keep an eye out for him. And also the man of elastic, Julio Cesar La Cruz, the light heavyweight, 3-time world champion, who got eliminated by Brazil's, I think it was Falcao, who eliminated him at the 2012 Olympics. They're all worth a watch. And also the heavyweight Erislandi Savon, the nephew of the great Felix Savon, who won 3 gold medals at 3 straight Olympics, and the super heavyweight Lenier Perrault, who advanced earlier on today. So that's the Olympics covered. And now that leaves us to our third topic, which is the decision of Enriko Gogokhia to make a switch to boxing full-time. And it's not just the fact that he switched to boxing, which plenty of kickboxers have done so over the past. It's the fact that he's been signed by both a big promotional powerhouse in main events, and his manager is now Egis Klimas, who specialises in managing pro boxers from Eastern Europe, and so far he's handled 4 world champions that I can think of. Former IBF heavyweight champ, or he challenged for the IBF heavyweight championship, so that makes it 3 world champs. But Vyacheslav Glazkov, he fought Charles Martin until he got injured for the IBF championship. Sergei Kovalev, the preeminent light heavyweight currently plying his trade. Vasyl Lomachenko, who is one of the finest pro boxers I think you'll find roundabouts nowadays, and Evgeny Gradovich, who is a former IBF featherweight champion. He's also got some very promising prospects in Alexander Glazovzik, who is 11-0, and also a couple of former amateur standouts from Lithuania in Virgilijus Stapulionis and Egidius Kavliauskis. So he's not Mr. Gogokhia is not going to be without talent in his stable. I think he's located to California, Los Angeles. A lot of Egis Klimas' fighters seem to be plying their trade and training at the Oxnard gym of Robert Garcia, of the famous Garcia fighting family. But like I said, that's in Oxnard, and Enrico is in Los Angeles, so I'm not quite sure where he'll be training. And like I said, his promoters, main events, notable mainly for being, I think they're the only promotional group which is operated entirely by women. Kathy Duva is the head honcho there, and the matchmaker is Jolene Mazzone. The Duva family, or the main event banner years ago, was one of the leading ones in boxing. Not so much nowadays. Like I said, Sergei Kovalev is probably main event's leading boxer at the moment. And many years ago, main events had a big hand in the very first Sugar Ray-Leonard Thomas Hearns fight, and also back in 1984, after the 1984 Olympics, main events signed out of the chute a ton of the Olympians, the American Olympians, which cleared up at that particular game. So they had Evander Holyfield, Meldrick Taylor, and Pernell Whitaker off the top of my head. So they really are a well-known force in the sport of boxing. But then there was some big infighting after Dan Duver, who's Kathy Duver's late husband. He passed of a brain tumour at the age of 44 about 20 years ago. And after that, there was a lot of fighting with the Duver family, and it's all split up to the point where Kathy Duver kept the name, and she kept her head down, earned a degree. I don't think Main Events held too many shows for a little while, and then a couple of years ago they really made a big go at having another smash at the helm at boxing, and now they've made some big inroads with HBO, who were one of the main TV driving forces in boxing in the US, but they've taken a bit of a shellacking this year. They've really unveiled some not too hot main events. But that's by the by. I was going to say Enriko Gogokhia, I've got to say, he's up against it when you take into consideration he was knocked out cold by Zabar Askarov at the Legend event a couple of years ago. So I'm not sure if that bodes too well for him, but obviously somebody has seen something which makes them think he's going to make a big success. But I was going to say the precedent is for Enriko is that he's one of the very few non-heavyweights who have made the jump to boxing. Albert Kraus had a few contests, pro boxing contests, a couple of years ago, but it didn't last too long. He worked out at Macklin's gym, Marbella, which is a big facility out in Spain which houses a ton of pro boxers, a few kickboxers and mixed martial artists. And also, I don't know if you can recall a couple of years ago when Tyson Fury had a dalliance with kickboxing, Albert Kraus was involved there. I think he went down for a few camps and trained with Team Fury. But yeah, I'll say he was the only non-heavyweight who's had a real big fist of it. Nicky Holtzkin has had a couple of contests at a very small venue in Holland, but I think that's just to keep ticking over while he waits for kickboxing fights to come up in glory. But the real big comparison, I think you could say, is Jerome Labana back in 1997 when he switched over to boxing. Around about 1997, 1998, he came in contact with Jean-Christophe Courage, who has got ties to boxing and kickboxing, and that led Jerome to signing with Don King back in 1998. Don, who at the time would sign anything that moved in the heavyweight division, and I seem to remember Jerome was called at a Don King press conference after one of his events, and Don really went to town, saying that he was going to make a big star of Jerome, and Jerome was going to make a big splash in the heavyweight division. It didn't quite happen, really. A couple of his contests were interspersed with bouts in K1, I think in May and July of 1998, and he made his pro boxing debut in February before moving on. He had, I think, April and June, he had a couple of boxing contests. Didn't really fight anybody of any note. I think all the fighters that he came up against had losing records. And he was dropped in, I think you could say, in Evander Holyfield's training camp when Holyfield was at the time the WBA and IBF heavyweight champion. And if you remember, Jerome had a fight at the Georgia Dome, which was on the undercard of Evander's heavyweight championship defence against Vaughan Bean in September of 1998. I always wondered why a kickboxing contest was held there. And then a couple of years ago I came across a book which was written by Evander's former manager, Jim Thomas, and in it he mentions an unnamed heavyweight, a French heavyweight, who Don King insisted joined the Holyfield camp, and after a couple of weeks, I think Jim Thomas made the call to Don King and said, "This isn't working. This gentleman, who I assumed was Jerome Labana, just isn't cut out for this." And he left the camp pretty soon after that, which was, I guessed, why the kickboxing event at the Georgia Dome went down. He had his final boxing event a couple of months later in November, and then after that the problems started forming, and he was promised undercard slots at the first Evander Holyfield-Lennox Lewis fight in March 1999. That didn't happen. I think there was also problems with purses. I think what Don King was promising and what he was delivering were two different things. And there was a big spell of inactivity between February and October of 1999 for Jerome, and eventually he went back to K1. I think Don held out for a fair bit of purse money to get back his investment, and eventually, like I said, Jerome returned to K1 after an inauspicious time in his boxing run. And if I remember rightly, I think the seeds were sown. If you go back and watch the K1 opening round in 1997 against Rick Rufus, Rick absolutely lit Jerome up with the boxing, and I think that could have been a harbinger of things to come. But Jerome did eventually retire from boxing undefeated. He had a couple of contests a few years back. I don't think it was nothing serious. I think it was rather like Nicky Holtzkin to just keep him ticking over. A few other boxers have had a go in the past also. Ray Sefo had a 3-fight run in between February and September of 2001. That was all 3 of those contests were held in Illinois, which was rather interesting. And I always thought it was intriguing, or a bit of speculative matchmaking, that he was thrown in with a 12-fight heavyweight, a big guy by the name of Chester Hughes. The interest in Ray's kickboxing run was such that it was even televised in Japan, of course the site of many of his K1 triumphs. And unfortunately for Ray, he was blasted out inside a minute by Chester Hughes, and that caused the end of his boxing run rather. And what I found intriguing about that was just 1 month after that heavy loss to Chester Hughes, which is available on YouTube if you want to see it, came the classic with Mark Hunt. So 90-day medical suspensions be damned. So 1 month after getting blasted out by Chester Hughes, he then had that war with Mark Hunt and didn't look back and was kickboxing all the way. And trying to think of a few other boxers who have tried to, or kickboxers rather, we tried to make a successful switch to boxing. Matt Skelton, who had a hell of a combat sports career, all things considered, competed for UWF way back in the day, had a fight for pride against Tom Erickson, had a big kickboxing career, and then he made the move to K1. He picked up some wins, most notably over Alexei Ignashov and Ray Sefo. I think he caused both of them to quit on their stool eventually. They were big victories. His last kickboxing contest was in 2001, and then a month after that, bang, he was straight into boxing. And he picked up British, Commonwealth and European heavyweight championships, and all the way up to a World Heavyweight Championship challenge against Ruslan Chagayev in, I think it was 2009, for the WBA Heavyweight Championship. So he's probably the most successful jumper to boxing from kickboxing. Of course, Badr Hari had that well-publicised jump, which never really went anywhere after his initial meeting with the trainer of Bernard Hopkins, Nazim Richardson. I think there were some visa issues went on there. Mike Bernardo had a 13-fight run in boxing. 7 of those happened while he was fighting in K1. Tyrone Spong still going, of course. He's had a few boxing matches, but his boxing career seems to be a bit stop-start. And Jarrell Miller, of course, Big Baby, who had that infamous fight with Mirko Krokop, not a classic by any means. By the way, Jarrell's in action next week, if you're interested, boxing against journeyman Fred Cassie. And Jarrell's got a promoter with some renown in Greg Cohen, but I think he was well known in boxing circles first of all, sparring with Tyson Fury and Vladimir Klitschko. So that's Enriko Gogokhia making the switch over. I wish him all the best. And then the final topic we're going to talk about, it's flown by really, is kickboxing books. I'm a bit of a voracious reader. This week I finished Ghosts of Manila, which is touching on Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. Doesn't paint Muhammad in a very positive light. And also I just finished off The Fight by Norman Mailer, which is said to be one of the finest one of the finest boxing books of all time. I didn't agree, but what I was going to get at is the lack of kickboxing books on the market. My fight library consists of, I'd say, about 95% boxing, 5% MMA. I've got very little kickboxing books at all. I think that off the top of my head, there's one which Michael Chiavello wrote, which covered Mark Hunt's kickboxing Grand Prix victory at the K1 2001 Grand Prix. Apart from that, I can't think of too much. There's a few in Dutch language. I know Ernesto Hoost, Badr Hari and Peter Arts have all had Dutch books, but English language, there's very little. And do you know of any? And if so, have you got? What ones have you got? Or are there any coming out? Tom Harink, I believe, has got one coming out pretty soon if it's not out already, but I'm not sure if that's English language. Do you know of any? Please let us know in the comments, which, by the way, you can comment on our YouTube channel, which we've got. I think it's Kakutougi Fightcast. Also, you can check us out on SoundCloud, and also you could comment on, of course, sign up to the forum, which I hope you do. And I think that's just about wraps up our very first edition of the Kakutougi Fightcast. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe. You can find us on iTunes, like I said, SoundCloud, YouTube, and also RSS Feed. like I said, if you could please, if you wish, sign up to the Kakutougi Fight Forum. It's absolutely free. All it will do is cost you 5 minutes of your time. Like I said, my name's Darren Falco, known as the Meiji. Hopefully next time I won't be stumbling over my words so much. And all that remains for me to say is thank you very much, and oos!